All right, granted that I don't royally f this thing up, say goodbye to the stock front bumper because this 4Runner is about to get a facelift. All right, it's about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm not even gonna lie, I've never been so excited and yet so nervous about an install before. You know, when I swapped out the front bumper on the Jeep, that was pretty cake, man. It was just like taking off the old bumper, slapping the new one on, it just bolts right on. This is gonna be a little bit more involved. There's gonna be some cutting, there's gonna be some sanding, there's gonna be some fitment stuff, there's gonna be a winch, some lights, all those things, all in one video. Let me just show you what it is that we're doing. This is the CBI Off-Road Covert front bumper for the 5th gen Toyota 4Runner. One of the biggest selling features for us when we bought the 4Runner is the aggressive styling of it. I want to try to keep as much of it looking stock as possible, and this is actually perfect for it. It fits the lines of the vehicles perfectly. It just goes right in the middle below the grille, and this is really all you're going to see, and I get to maintain the sides of this original bumper and make it look really, really nice. This is the Light Force Genesis, and I absolutely love these lights. Like, I hit up Light Force and requested these lights specifically for the 4Runner because this is what I wanted to run on them, and I did my research to make sure that it would clear the bull bar because I wanted to put one here and I wanted to do one here. I asked for measurements from CBI Off-Road. I gave them the measurements for this. They don't have like the experience with these lights in particular, but they said there shouldn't be a problem, and just based off of some of the measurements I thought it would be okay. But unfortunately, it does not. Like, I am bumming so hard, you guys, because I really wanted these to work. I love these lights. Had the bull bar just been a little bit higher, I would have been able to clear it with no problem. Had I known that these weren't going to clear, I would have probably gotten the front bumper that does not have a bull bar. But again, one of the requirements we had when getting a front bumper was that it had a bull bar because we really like that bull bar look. Now you might ask, well, why not just ditch the whole round light idea and just get an LED light bar and put it right here, because that's what these cutouts are for. And that's fine, except that if I'm being honest, I'm not like a super big fan of light bars. Like, I like them for certain applications. We're gonna get some for the roof rack of the 4Runner, but it's not something that just sweeps me off my feet, right? Like, I wanted to do a build that was a little bit different, and most everyone I know that has this bumper for their 4Runner has a light bar there, and it's fine, it looks good. It's just I wanted to kind of do something a little bit different with this build. Now, I have been speaking with Light Force, brainstorming some ideas, and they're going to be sending over a set of lights that I think are going to look really, really nice on this thing. I'm actually a fan of those lights as well, and I've been looking for an excuse to integrate them into one of our rigs. So I'm excited for those to come in because it's going to make this thing look really unique. The Apex Badland 12,000 pound synthetic rope winch. This thing is a beast. I have been running this exact winch on the Jeep for a couple of years now and have done some recovery, and I'm telling you, this thing is a champ. This has also become really popular with a lot of people because of the price point that it comes with, and now I'm glad that I'm able to put this on the 4Runner as well. This was sent to me by Harbor Freight. Thank you guys so much for sending this over, man. I am so honored that we've been working together for the last couple of years because you guys have truly been really supportive of this channel, and I am glad I now have the same kind of system to put in the 4Runner so that if that ever gets stuck, then we have a way of getting out. I already did an entire video dedicated to just this winch itself. I'll link it in the description below if you want to know more about the Apex Badland. So yeah, let's just get to the install. So my goal for today is to get this bumper prepped and be ready to be mounted, meaning add the winch, add in all the bolts and hold them in place with duct tape. You'll know what I mean soon enough. Do everything I need to do so that this is ready to go. In most videos I've seen online, if not all videos I've seen online when they do these kind of bumper installs, they always start with the vehicle. They cut open the bumper and they do all that stuff, and that's fine, except that after I do that, then I still got to go and prep this, and that means that the vehicle can't be used in that time, and I don't know if my wife needs to go run errands. What I would rather do is get this ready, then bring the vehicle in, start dismantling that so that as soon as I'm done with all the vehicle stuff, this is already ready to be mounted and test fitted. That just reduces the amount of time that the vehicle is inoperable. So while I'm doing this, at least the vehicle is still kind of free for us to use. So yeah, let's go ahead and mount this winch. First step is to attach the fair lead of the winch. Do this before everything else because it will become extremely difficult to thread the bolts in the back with the winch in the way. For the winch, take the square nuts included in the kit and drop them into the 4 slots underneath the winch. I'll tell you now from past experience, you'll want to cover these holes temporarily with painter's tape so the bolts don't slide back out while you're trying to mount the winch on. You can remove these later once the bolts have been threaded through. Next, take the thin ground black wire coming out of the control box along with the thick ground black wire included in the kit and bolt them to the body. If you are relocating the control box, however, you want to follow those instructions in the install guide. Place the winch on the bumper and line it up with the holes in the bumper and bolt the winch on from the bottom. Don't fully tighten until you've got all 4 bolts lined up and threaded. Now this is an important step. Disengage the winch by turning the lever to free spool, then pull the beginning of the rope or cable out through the fair lead. Again, this is another thing you'll want to do while you still have easy access to everything. Now we have to assemble the bottom decorative cover that will cover the large access hole you went through earlier to bolt on the winch. We assemble it by snapping on the clips to the side of the cover. If you're following along in real time, don't follow what I'm doing here. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Alright, I actually need to say something because sometimes you get products from companies, mom and pop, great products, but sometimes they never give you instructions, right? And sometimes they'll tell you just go online and we have an install video there, but that install video, they just kind of skip parts. And something happened just now and it was never mentioned in any video that it's actually important. And I'm going to tell you because I don't want you to make the same mistake. So here's the problem I'm running into, and this was supposed to be the easiest part of everything. I was attempting to install this cover plate that goes over this hole. Once you've mounted the winch, you put this cover plate on, kind of cleans up the look, and it's divvied inwards. But to install those, you have to put these things at the end of it, these clips. Once you put those clips on, it's very hard to remove because once you snap them in, this little part right here pushes inwards and it gets stuck there. Well, here's the problem. One thing they don't mention in those other videos is that this clip, you have to actually orient it the other way, where the part that bulges out is on this side and not the other side. Because now I'm trying to remove this plate out of that hole, but it's getting stuck because of this little divvy down here at the bottom. It's getting caught right here, and I'm not able to take the plate out to reorient these clips. So now I'm like racking my brains trying to figure out how to at least get these 2 clips out so I can slip this plate back out, reorient the clips, and then put them back in. All right, I finally got the plate out. All I needed to do was remove 1 clip so that I can slide this thing out because that was the one that was getting caught up. So this is what I mean. You see that divvy right there? So when it gets installed in on your bumper, the divvy goes inwards, right? So it's supposed to go in, this going towards the back, the part with the mesh. So it's supposed to look like that on your bumper. I thought it goes in like this on the bumper, so I installed it that way so I can screw into that. Well, it's not. It actually goes inwards, and that's something that they don't mention. So when you install this in that hole of the bumper, this goes towards the back and it goes inwards. At least I got it out. Now I just have to repop these clips back out. Now that it's out, it should be easier to pop out. All we need is a screwdriver. You have to kind of grab that little clip that got pushed in. There you go. See, it's hard to do it when it was stuck inside that bumper. But now that it's out, I can go ahead and push these back out again. All right, now that we know it's going inwards, let's attach these clips again, this time with the bump facing this way. With that problem fixed, I was able to slip the cover inside the bumper and finally bolt them into place. Next thing we want to do is take 4 of the side bolts and place 2 in the slots on each side of the bumper. These bolts will be difficult to access later, so one thing you can do to hold the bolt in place is to duct tape them from the inside. This will keep it from popping out when you thread the nuts on later. It is day 2. Bumper ready to go onto the 4Runner. That's why I'm glad I started with that, because that took me a while and I didn't want that 4Runner to not be drivable. Speaking of the 4Runner, we're gonna be cutting that up today. I am really hoping that this thing can get mounted on there without me having to take the control box off the winch. I highly doubt it. I know I might have to relocate that control box, but if I don't have to, that's gonna just make my day. So yeah, a lot going on today. Let me walk you through this real quick, and then we'll bring in the runner and start cutting. All right, so got the fair lead mounted right here, pulled out a little bit of the line, and then kind of just used the Velcro strap to hold it in place here. You don't want to have to be fishing for that thing, trying to get it out of there. Once this whole thing is basically covered by the grill, you're not going to be able to get to it anymore. So make sure you pull that out and have that ready to go. When you install the winch, you do have to install the lines. So here's your negative cable right here, along with this little ground cable as well, this tiny one, and here's the positive lead that will go to the battery. Now displayed here, this is what gave me the biggest headache, and it's supposed to be the easiest part of the install. Just make sure that when you are installing this, that this goes inwards, and then the nub goes that way, and then that's it. You won't have a problem with that. And then finally, I went ahead and put in the bolts. I got these started. See, it comes out right there. And then I put some duct tape on there, because what's gonna happen is once you get this onto the vehicle, you know, you have your grill here and you can only reach in from the top. So you need to have this kind of held in place. These are the brackets that goes onto the side, and this clips on to the plastic part of your bumper, and it holds that bumper in place. You're gonna have a hard time, because again, the bumper is gonna be here, so someone's gonna need to basically tighten the nut on this side while someone is reaching their hand down into there and holding the bolt in place. So to kind of alleviate some of that, it's been taped up over here so that we can at least get the bolt started once this bumper has been installed. And that is pretty much the bumper ready to go. To prep the bumper, the first thing we need to do is trace around the front trim, as this is the area we will be cutting out. Once that's been traced, grab the trim and just yank it off, then finish the tracing by following the inner line. After that, remove the 2 bolts at the bottom towards the center of the bumper. Now it's time to trim off the area you marked using a Dremel or saw. Quick note, newer model 4Runners have the fog light wires running through there, so you want to double check before you start cutting that yours doesn't. You don't want to accidentally cut into it. Now you want to get close, but don't cut all the way to the line you traced. It's better to remove material as needed versus cutting off too much and you can't put it back. This will all get tucked behind the new bumper, so you don't want to cut off too much that you'll see a gap. Once it's removed, pull the foam piece off the crash bar and discard it. From there, go ahead and start sanding the edge to get closer to the inner edge of your line, then run a razor blade or burr removal tool to get rid of the burrs. Then using a saw or Dremel, cut off the tabs below the grill. Now it's time to remove the crash bar. Start by removing the 10mm bolts that hold the crash bar at the bottom. There are 2 on each side. Now remove the 14mm bolts on top of the crash bar. There are 3 at each end. And finally, remove the 14mm bolts inside the holes in front. There are 3 at each end also. You will need a short extension to reach them, and because the bolts might be tight, it also doesn't hurt to not be as skinny as I am. With all the bolts removed, the crash bar will just come right off. Now we have to remove the crash bar brackets. There are 4 14mm bolts on each side. Save the bolts though, as you will be using them again for the new bumper. Here's a tip, take one of the bolts and thread it through the back. Put one on each side, and I'll explain later. With the crash bar brackets removed, we need to trace a line in the plastic pieces to cut out. On the passenger side, it's just a straight line that lines up with the bottom of your grill. On the driver's side, it starts at the bulge just right below the hose, goes straight across, comes down the corner, and then straight across along the line you'll see on the plastic piece. I'll go through it in more detail later, but the short end of it is this is to ensure the plastic piece does not get in the way of the new bumper. Then just cut it off as neatly as you can. Alright guys, the 4Runner has been prepped and is ready to receive the CBI bumper. The front of this bumper has been cut and removed. I went and sanded down and deburred all the edges. The new bumper is basically going to cover all these edges, so you'll never really see it. But for your own sake, make it a clean install anyway and do a good job and try to make sure that you clean up all the edges and make it look really nice, even if you will never see it. Crash bar has been removed, as well as the brackets that were holding those crash bars. Once you remove those brackets that are holding that hold the crash bar, you need to save those 4 bolts because you are going to be reusing them again for the new bumper. But what I did was I took one of the bolts and went in from the back side. This is just going to help guide the bumper, so when we put the new bumper on, it'll rest on this thing. That's just a good tip to kind of help you line everything up without you trying to maneuver that bumper, especially how heavy it is. Now, as far as those plastic pieces, the ones that kind of came out all the way to over here, you need to cut those because the bumper needs to clear it. On the passenger side, it's actually really easy. Just line it up to the bottom of your grill over here, and then cut a straight line from the front all the way to the back of this plastic piece right here. Just be very careful you don't cut into any of the hoses or the power steering line or any of that stuff. So just be really careful about that. The only challenge I had was my Dremel wouldn't fit back here, so I just used a handsaw to kind of get it going and then pulled it out a little bit and finished it off with the Dremel. Now on the driver's side, it's a little bit more complicated, and this is the part that I had a lot of confusion on how they were cutting it online, so I kept just watching all these other videos. It basically comes from the back, and then when you get to this little part where it turns right here, then it comes down. You'll see kind of a line where that other part right before it goes this way. So just follow that line over. You're basically just, again, clearing this whole area so the bumper can go right in. This one was a lot more difficult trying to get over here because the plastic kind of wraps all the way to back here, and I couldn't get to it, so I had to chop this in a ton of different pieces until I finally got the whole thing out and finished. You're really, again, just clearing this whole area to make room for that CBI bumper and winch. You can bend this a little bit, just not too much that it kinks, and you can also bend this little line here because at the end of these, it's just rubber anyway. So you have some play. You just need to loosen these bolts over here, and then you'll be able to kind of push this upwards, and hopefully that'll clear your winch control box. And if it does not, then you're gonna have to relocate your winch control box. But anyway, that's it for now. It's starting to rain a little bit. It's not supposed to last, but I think this is a good time to kind of get some rest. Maybe pick this up tomorrow or pick it up later tonight. So here was my first attempt to mount the bumper. I bent the line as discussed, then rolled the bumper into place with my jack that had a platform attachment usually used for motorcycles. I kept lifting and lowering, but it would just keep leading to one side or the other. If this was a sport, then the current score would be bumper 1, Asia 0. I was up pretty late last night just trying to get this thing mounted, and I started getting impatient, started throwing out a lot of curse words, and I'm just like, you know what, let me stop and resume in the morning when I have a fresher mind and I'm not so tired. I know this thing will fit, it's just I'm doing this by myself and trying to maneuver this really heavy bumper with the winch underneath there and trying to line it up with those holes proves to be a little bit difficult when it's just you. I'm trying to do this to where I don't have to remove the solenoid control box from the winch and relocate it. If I were to do that, if I were to just remove this now, this would probably slide in a lot easier. But then I know that I'm gonna have an even harder time just trying to find a place to where I'm gonna mount this. Apex Badlands does give you a relocation bracket, but I don't know where I would even begin to put that in the engine bay because the leads are so limited. So it has to be really close, and it's pretty tight already in the front as it is. I'll get there. This is gonna get put on today. It's just, I need to take a breath, need to take a beat, and resume again when I'm a lot crisper up here. My first attempt in the morning was successful. The holes lined up with the bolts, I turned the other way, and from there I was able to put the other bolts the right way. Once it was bolted down, I was able to remove the bolt facing the other way and thread it from the front like the rest. With those main bolts in place, take the 2 long bolts in the kit and bolt the bumper to the vehicle on each side at the bottom. This fully secures the bumper, and now you can drop the jack and admire your work. Alright, today's lesson, actually lesson for every day, is that sometimes you just need to take a breather. First attempt, it went right on. Had to do some maneuvering or whatever, but bam, it is in there and it's looking so good. That Apex Badland winch does fit in there without you having to relocate the control box. Thank God. The line behind it does touch it a little bit, but it's not like pressed up on it. I did go ahead and put one of those wire looms, the braided wire looms, to kind of just protect that line in the event that it does rub up on that control box too much and it won't chafe it. I didn't even have to really bend that line much either. It fit really well. Only thing we got to do now is I'm going to tighten up those 3 bolts, and then those side bolts that we put in, I need to torque that to 60 foot-pounds, and then that'll be good. And then we do have to add these brackets to the side because that's what will clean up all of this gap right here. It's going to basically tuck this into the bumper on both sides, and then we'll be good there. And then we just have to connect that winch, and then that'll be operational. But for now, I'm going to take a break because I am feeling super accomplished by this thing. It just looks really, really good. Now we have to attach the brackets that secure the plastic bumper to the new bumper and keep it from flaring out. And this is why I had to duct tape the bolts in the beginning so it doesn't get pushed out when I thread on the nuts. With the bolts started, we can also get the bolts attached to the plastic bumper loosely as well. So one of the biggest issues I've seen a lot of people have on YouTube is trying to get to those bolts that we duct taped earlier. Like duct taping them on there and then getting the bolt started is fine. But then after that, someone needs to hold the bolt in place down there while someone else goes underneath the vehicle and turns it. And then here is when I realized that me being skinny has its advantages. And Bob's your uncle. Now I just have to repeat it all 4 times to all 4 bolts. But yeah, that's just me showing off. After tightening all the bolts, now I just had to run the negative and positive wires on the winch directly to my battery, and the winch is ready to go. I just need to add the hook and I'm done. At least for now.